We are watching the second part of the videotape on multifamily groups with Professor Jorge Garcia Badaracco. What we are going to watch now is linked to some aspects of violence. Could you give us some comments in this connection?
Yo preguntaría, Jorge, lo que vamos a ver ahora, que yo lo he podido ver y analizar contigo, es un aspecto de la violencia, ¿no? ¿Qué podríamos decir como introducción a la imagen que vamos a ver? Sí.
Well, these sequences have been shot during the second session, a month after the first session. This is the first situation I have called in the book I'm currently writing, The Unending Argument.
Aparece una primera situación que es la pelea, que yo después le llamo una pelea interminable.
In this sequence, Angel Luis' mother and patient Angel Luis are starring, so to speak, a scene, the form of which is violent, and its content is above all painful because the argument implies that those two people, instead of getting closer, get apart more and more, a separation widening every minute as dialogue goes by. Now, as we have saw before, this is a deep separation that was generated years ago, most probably during childhood, because of the way Angel Luis' mother treats him, since her authoritarian and somewhat primitive display of energy, sounding real grotesque, tells us so. But this also evidences a deep insight in the difficulties lying between him and her, and that must have been so for years on end. And this evidences a father is lacking. From another perspective, we could say that among a multifamily group, that this argument, hence violence, could be representative of violence into the group. So mother and son could be seen as the spokesperson of this violence a group is sometimes reluctant to show up. Well, this could be quite so. The first videotape showed violence among other people. Now we are going to observe violent feelings again. That is, there is a latent underlying violence that at times bursts out in this or that person. In some aspects, contents are similar. Conflicts appear, and that's the point I'm interested in. Conflicts make you realize that other people are in conflict. You are not the only one. You can see other people mirroring yourself, and this is food for thought. It's much easier for you to elaborate what other people are enduring than elaborating your own problem. Your problem is much more acted, so to speak. So when you are deeply emotionally involved and you act your violence, your grief, your difficulties, you just can't think, but somebody else is watching you, and this person is in a position to think, and this person can grasp things that are useful for him or her, and that is our work.
No puede pensar, pero el que está viendo eso sí puede pensar. Y entonces, desde allí,
puede rescatar cosas útiles para él mismo, y eso es lo que trabajamos. Antes de ir a
One more question. What I see and what I've watched in the first tape is that a multifamily group acts as a kind of support that allows people to theorizing safely.
que permite poder exteriorizar esto sin llegar la sangre al río.
Claro.
This support notion seems most important to me. Support of what exactly? Well, a psychological support for all the things likely to happen to a human being in relation with others, a situation where you feel floated. And when you can see things floating, but here people take things much easier because the group helps. Group acts as a rampart against aspects that generally go beyond your bounds. When you are lacking a space where you can go beyond your bounds, well, you get mad. There, this momentary madness that is everyone's other floating in a psychosocial context and a multifamily structure allows you to get supported. It allows you to feel supported. It allows you to think and elaborating your own overfloating. Let's have a look at it. Well, I'll talk. I never had any difficulties with my son. Since he was taken ill, I came in here, he was quiet enough. Well, that happened to me. He never called me names as he did that day when he said horrible things. But he never did me any harm, nothing. He keeps me company. When he's at home, he keeps me company nicely. And he's very quiet. I feel completely safe with him at home. But that week, I don't know what happened. I cooked lunch. This must be due to a resentment he feels against me. He's taken ill, and I take him here. That's it. This is what he has against me. He gets sick and I take him in. Doctor, there is nothing. He never behaved aggressive. But that time I was afraid of him. Well, once you told me I was a son of a bitch. Well, you started calling me names. I threw myself on my bed crying as crazy, and he called me whore, and I told her I felt I was not loved. Well, that's it, doctor. He felt terrible that day, and he called me names. I did not expect him to call me. I felt quite hurt, but at least I came here to fetch him because he's my son and I love him. I came here to fetch him and I took him back home again. And then he came back here all by himself. He came back here. Yeah, I came back here all by myself because you, that day you threw me out of home. On that day, no, on that day I did not throw you out of home. That day you told me you're leaving home. I told you I'm on a 3-day leave, 3 days, and I behaved during a week at hospital. Look here, I told you when you called me names, you called me whore on the bed, and so many ugly things I did not expect from you. I told you, Angel Luis, you go back to hospital because I don't want you around here. Get out, by God. And he said, I don't get out because this house is mine. Well, he stayed, but when he felt like it, he left and told me I'm on my way. The cops to turn me in. No, I frightened him with the police because you don't know. I say I don't know what to do with that boy. I think we have just watched was quite illustrative. Do you have any comments? Well, we could comment a lot, but let's do a synthesis. Angel Luis.
Bueno, se podrían decir muchas cosas, ¿no? Pero tenemos que hacer una especie de síntesis. No,
Angel Luis is a married man with 2 daughters, but as a mental patient, he has become mom's sonny, and she treats him as if he were a child. Doesn't she call him that boy, does she? She brings him home, she takes him to hospital when he gets sick, and so on. Reproaches are terrible because she says he was going to hit her or frighten to harm her, and he said she called him son of a bitch, and she says she frightened her. She frightened him, to turn him in because he had frightened her before. So you never know where this unending argument begins or when it is bound to finish. On the other hand, there's a feedback between both because they need them one another. If not, each one would go his or her way, period. Now the needs is a mutual need. Each one has a pathology. The need form parts of a pathology and the feedback too. On the other hand, they should have needed a man around, a father, to set up a context, the law, as Lacan puts it. Well, let's call it the law. That is a presence within a context, a presence allowing a triangulation within that situation, which is not exactly the case here because both are living a pathological pathogen symbiosis and they do not allow a third party to insert between both. In the first step, we saw how a third party, myself, could insert himself. Now we are going to see that again, but in this case, they do not allow you to mingle in. They don't allow a third party to enter, and this takes care of that. All this is quite painful because both are alone in the world, so she needs him and he needs her, and that's why they keep the unending argument going along over and over again. And they think they get some communication through this argument. And they feel they are not alone. They get a hold on something. Mother gets the possession of her son, and son wishes to. When he says, "This house is mine," he would like to substitute for the deceased father, but he just can't. The same way he can't be a father for his own daughters. So he's caught up in a trap, and that's just awful. Mental illness is made of these sort of things, and many a time you cannot see that amongst schizophrenics. That kind of factors do not appear there, neither among patients who can tell, nor family who don't tell. These are things people refrain from talking about, but as soon as you talk, these things burst out. You've already mentioned that, but nonetheless, would you like to comment on an underlying violence likely to be an underlying psychosis? I think there is in psychosis a kind of violence control or a way to get hold of any inner violence likely to overthrow the situation, but by means of the psychotic behavior, violence is controlled and freezes down. So, there is no longer any dynamic to observe. There is something at a standstill, something stereotyped and repetitive that builds symptoms up, and symptoms repeat and condense pathologically enough both the situation and the violence involved. They get crystallized. They get crystallized indeed in schizophrenia, for example, but Angel Luis is not a schizophrenic. He's a maniac depressive patient, and any maniac depressive patient may get in and get out of hospital many times because he or she is unable to learn. He or she is not prepared to face life because he or she is always repeating. A schizophrenic patient repeats intrapsychically, but he or she is also unable to escape. Now, what I observe here is how one of them drives the other one mad and vice versa. In that sense, I have developed a notion I call the maddening object. In that case, the maddening object is mother versus son and son versus mother. But now, they need each other and they are involved. Both are maddening object with each one psychism, because whenever mom misses him, she goes and fetches son, and whenever son misses her, he goes and looks out for her. Since they can't get out of that, they can't really live a real life. That's it. Okay, let's go on. I wanted to include you all because I think that even in the peak of higher violence, it's possible to include you people, you get positive things. You're important because you bring our point of view which we can listen to because you can't stand the emotion it causes to you. Well, we are here to stand up a little more than we have been used to stand up for until now. If not, we would not be going to learn anything. You'll be talking all the whole morning long. If I had some more time available, I think we could do that indeed. If we closed the door and we stayed all of us inside, I think that Angel Luis would eventually calm down. But we can't. So we have to let him go. If he wishes so, he may come back later on.
Yo creo que podríamos, si nos cerramos la puerta acá y nos quedamos todos acá adentro, poco a poco Ángel Luis se iría calmando, yo creo.
A very important thing, Angel Luis told me that before, 1 hour and a half ago, he wanted to be discharged. He was okay, he felt fine, and now he's nervous. I don't know what's eating him. That I wanted to tell, nothing else. Okay. This too is important. Who can say whoever is entitled to say which one feels fine and which one doesn't? How can anybody say who's okay and who isn't? Obviously, the first person who has to say, I feel fine, that's me. I can't say I feel fine, I feel terrific and this and that, but somebody else says no. The guy doesn't look so well, something is wrong. That means that feeling okay or not must be agreed upon a consensus basis. I can say I feel fine, but other people must also agree that I look fine.
Debe ser, digamos, algo por consenso. La persona tiene que decir que está bien, pero los demás también tienen que verlo bien.
Families. Sometimes relatives are frightened. It's a burden. They feel crushed by all kinds of problems, so you enter an intolerant situation so that you are no longer able to enjoy a real family life. That's why people go to hospitals.
Y se entra en una situación de intolerancia que no se puede vivir en la familia. Y por eso las personas a veces necesitan venir a un hospital.
May I would like my relatives to come here because my relatives never come in here. I invite them to come every Monday, every Holy Monday, but now they can't come in. I would like them to be here so they could know me and listen to my problems. You are not only right, but also you ask for something absolutely valuable, and that's why we do these things together. What I can suggest you, your relatives don't visit you for the time being, maybe in the near future. Anyhow, you should try and discover that we are some kind of a substitute family, so you can prepare yourself to get along with your relatives if you get along with us first. That's a way you can use to prepare yourself.
Y que se vaya preparando para poder entenderse mejor con sus familiares en la medida que pueda entenderse mejor con nosotros. Eso es una forma, es un camino para poder prepararse.
I have no communication with regards to my relatives. I have problems, I have arguments with my mother, with my father about anything that goes wrong in our business, a wrong tariff or something. I don't know why they don't want to come here. There are lots of motives for not visiting a mental hospital. Sometimes people are afraid of this kind of hospital. Listen to me a minute. They're afraid of the name of the hospital or because it's a mental hospital. Well, they're afraid of many things. Either hospital's name it's being a mental hospital or afraid of people you imagine here, and also a family expects that, let's say they think their relative will feel better in the near future, so will be in a better position to talk. But actually, patients need to talk to feel better. So a vicious circle is created which makes things more and more difficult, so sometimes people prefer to wait and see. Angel Luis, for example, you must wait before you talk to him, but he needs to talk if he wants to get somewhat better, and it's very difficult to arrange things that way. It seems to me we are trying to find a way to help us a little more, a way to manage moments of heavy violence, above all among our family.
Para poder ver cómo se pueden manejar momentos de mucha violencia.
How can we manage violence? Okay, in my case, there has been a similar situation with the family arguments. Me, last weekend, I had a terrible argument with my parents, and I somewhat took the decision to come back here because I didn't feel well at home. I think Doc's right. It has to do with the need you have to get in touch directly with your family or anybody else. We are quite disconnected at home now. I don't know whether I'm to blame for that, who knows. But if no one tries his best, each one of us tries to get better, we won't do it. Today, for example, my family isn't here. I was waiting for them, and now I don't know what happened. Maybe they've accepted my decision to leave home all of a sudden, like that. I think everything comes from the fact that I feel a loner, and they're also loners, and the need to be with someone, we look for that, and we try and replace it with aggressivity and abuse and arguments and endearment sometimes. I think this is not only a tolerance problem, it's a need problem. In other words, a mother may wish his son to be this or that, but this is what she needs, and whenever her son doesn't live up to her expectations, she can't tolerate that. Her wishes, she can't tolerate. Her wishes don't come true or don't fulfill her needs to have an excellent son, an intelligent son, and so on. That is a bright person likely to give her lots of satisfactions, while this usually fails to happen. On the other hand, if you are not just as your parent wished, this is likely to give rise to guilty feelings. You feel you're a bad son.
Por otra parte, el no ser como los padres esperan que uno sea, a veces genera sentimiento de culpa. Uno se siente un mal hijo.
And feeling you're a bad son makes you feel miserable. I think about all you've said, and you are almost right. Sometimes I think that your family wants you to be as they wish. That is not really as you are. That is, your family wants to build something according to their own tastes. I can't explain myself clearly. According to what they want, and when you aren't as they want, there's a gap. Many things happen. That's what happened with my aunt. I feel very grateful. She worries about myself, but sometimes I ask her to stay a little and chat, not only coming here to bring me some cigarettes. I've asked you many a time to stay and chat with me, to keep me company. I need her to stay, to chat. But there's something else. It's possible that you are not sure about what you want to be or what you can be, because if you could feel sure about yourself, your aunt would be the first person to feel at ease with you, even though you weren't just what she expected. I think when you explained quite well, because I think all that is quite linked with all we were talking about, I think that what your aunt needs is knowing that you feel well, that you can face life. And And you, what you need is that she comes here to chat with you, to find out her opinion, if she can give you some advice, if she can help you facing life. In other words, you still don't think sure about yourself. So you're not feeling quite sure about yourself is also a source of anxiety. My not feeling sure started with institutionalization. That is, as soon as institutionalization started, I began feeling unsure. I began feeling afraid. Before that, well, as anybody else, I was afraid, as anybody else is afraid in life, but feeling unsure, that began with institutionalizations. Institutionalization is most likely to cause you feeling unsure because you say to yourself, but what, I'm ill? No, being institutionalized can also be the starting point for you to feel more and more sure about yourself. I don't know if I speak clearly. In other words, institutionalization is a moment in life when you can review things of time past, things that led you to hospital, so as of institutionalization, you can get more and more confident than before. Because it sometimes happened, you felt safe before, but your safety was not entirely safe. You were persuaded all was fine, but all of a sudden you did a crisis because you were facing a situation you couldn't manage. That doesn't mean being discharged from hospital bright as a $1 million with only a little medicine to take, because that's precisely what Angel Luis' mother was talking about when she stated he was going to stay in here until she advised to the contrary, and that he was to take his medicine and she would see to it, by golly. I never said that. Oh, yes, you did. And what you did, it was because you were persuaded that this is the right way to solve people problems. But sorry, that's not the way. Well, Fabian, I listened to him and I feel somewhat dazzled. Fabian himself, he doesn't know what he wants. He doesn't know. One day he wants this, and the day after he wants that, and day after tomorrow he will be wanting something else. And I think neither I nor him are in a position to decide what suits him best. This not being sure about himself, he transmits it to others. He transmits it because let's suppose we have a project and now he has another one. So that is not his being unsure. The point is everybody being unsure about everything. When he says we don't keep him company, because definitely that's what he just said, he would like everybody to come and keep him company all the time. He jolly well knows we have obligations to fulfill. I, for one thing, I work, let's call that a freelance work, but I work. After that, I'm occupied with his kids, because whenever his wife can go, I go and fetch them at school. If they need to have a vaccination, there I go. That is, even though I do not give him all my time, I do it one way or the other.
Entonces quiere decir que aunque yo directamente no dedique mi tiempo personalmente a él, de alguna manera se lo estoy dando.
I think all this is most interesting, and why? If I understood correctly, Fabian said he feels alone in the world, and especially when he's here. When you visit him, he feels that he needs to talk to you. He simply needs to be with you. He refers to something emotional, affective, something from his inner world, something linked to his family, what we just mentioned a moment ago. The thing that puzzles you is that you're good to him, you look after his children, you do a lot of things to him, and you think he doesn't acknowledge it.
Emocional, afectivo de su mundo interno, que tiene que ver con la familia y con lo que estábamos hablando recién acá. Usted lo que nos explica es que usted es buena, se ocupa de los hijos de él, hace una serie de cosas.
That is, you can't understand his point of view. The thing is not that he doesn't acknowledge it, he simply doesn't see it. Nevertheless, he just did it right now, and curiously enough, you are both of us talking through me as if you felt you have to give explanation to somebody else. And my impression is that you people need a third party. There are always mothers and sons alone without the presence of a father. There are very few fathers present here today. I think you are the only one among us. In other words, there is something basic missing. Father is missing.
Es decir, falta algo básico en toda esta situación, que es la falta del padre.
Well, we have just watched 3 very meaningful sequences. Whoever is entitled to say which one is okay, psychically okay that is, and which one is mad. Let's get prepared so that we know what to do when facing family violence and a starting point. Indeed, they are very interesting. And make a complete sequence. A topic surges and articulates itself between what we have seen before and what we'll see afterwards. Topic called "Whoever is entitled to say which one is okay" is a deep topic, likely to give way to a theoretical, broader development. But what we're commenting about is what happened in those sequences. The idea that the other one is the sick one is used many a time from a power position, and the person using this idea uses this power sternly. And this is the case of Uncle Luis and his mother.
Es decir, como que la consideración o la idea de que el otro está mal muchas veces es utilizada desde una posición de poder y ejerce su poder, como en el caso, por ejemplo, de la madre de Luis sobre él, y la madre de Salvador intenta.
In turn, patient Salvador fights strongly against this power exercise his mother performs. The problem is that such a situation gives rise to arguments, a situation where it's very difficult to find out who started the plot, who's the baddie, and if there is a way out. This is an aspect of family violence. Hence, that's why I say, well, we are here in order to learn, all of us, what to do when facing family violence. Now, this know-how is not only an intellectual problem about knowledge. The idea is knowing how to manage emotion, not only emotions in one's inner self, but also emotions dealing with other people. When treating the unconscious, psychoanalysis, for example, is aimed at having patient understanding that his or her conflicts are, and what can be done in this connection after patient has learned how to think about, on the one hand. Now, on the other hand, individual psychoanalysis lacks the context which will make possible for you to either deal with the other party's violence, to learn how the other party drives you mad, or how a feedback is produced between the madness both parties evidence. That's what we can see within the family context. Now, in a multi-family context, it's not only possible to hold back violence, but also you learn what to do. Because in the core of family context or family therapy, research consists in either interpretation or knowledge according to the chosen perspective. That is, a psychoanalytic interpretation in the case of a psychoanalytic family therapy, a systemic interpretation consisting in disassembling systems, and a cognitivist interpretation to know what's going on inside each person. Now, Dynamic of violence, for example, overflows all these contexts, and all of them are contained within a multifamily context. In this context, yes, we can learn. It's a topic which became widespread after the publication of a book called Emotional Intelligence that clearly showed there's a kind of intelligence to manage emotion, a faculty which is lost whenever emotion overflow and block up intelligence. Actually, we were already aware of that because that intelligence is the ability of thinking we have already talked about. Learning how to get an ability to tolerate violence, inner as well as outer violence, so we keep our thinking faculty. Before, when you clarified the relationship between Ángel Luis and his mother, you privately told me that you should have intervened in another way when Ángel Luis was quite violent.
Comentaste detrás de cámara que quizás tu intervención tendría que haber sido otra en un momento de gran violencia. Claro.
Well, yes, if I should have managed more freely at that time, that was the first time I was getting acquainted with them. And believe me, the violence pervaded myself too, you may be sure. Now, generally speaking, I should have had Ángel Luis sitting next to me, say to the left, and have his mother sitting besides to the right, as you can see here in the tape, and I should have been in a better position to manage the situation. Maybe Ángel Luis should not have left the group, I agree. Ángel Luis should not have left, and if we had some more time available, as I said, we could have him included back, which had always been my intention, because otherwise other patients may have had an impression they were living a traumatic no-exit situation, and that's important. What's important is showing everybody, showing the whole group that every situation has a possible solution, and that solution can be reached at. That no-exit situation you mentioned is only referred to that moment, isn't it? Because actually there's an exit. There's always an exit available. What about the starting point? The starting point is something most interesting because Fabian explains us. Due to his different institutionalization, he started living situations of insecurity, or else his sensation of an insecure way of living grew bigger and bigger in his mind. So I try and explain that this sensation per se is not bad, that if he feels a sense of insecurity, it's because he realized he was ill. What am I going to do? What's going to happen to me? It's in that sense when other insecurities burst out, but if we take gingerly into account the things we do, our institutionalization period is likely to become a starting point to have securities blossoming and not insecurities only. We must understand that all we are doing is for that purpose, and that includes all concerned, patients and patients' relatives, so that they feel more secure, so that they can deal with life events. I think that such a moment gets generalized among all and becomes a contribution from all patients and relatives participating in that session. Okay, let's have it. When I had my opportunity to attend a course, principal, the first time I took it a little as a way to get out of here, as if I said, I'm not doing a treatment. Now, as soon as I started understanding iBox engines, when I looked at motor compressors and all the circuits, so I started thinking more and more, and that's how I recall that quite before, during my first institutionalization, how I was, all of a sudden, I was mentally okay, but from a personal point of view, all of a sudden, at time, it was sort of decadent. I have my moment of decadence. You mean depression, sadness, or bitterness? No, I wasn't depressive. No, it was the lack of a personality. It was as if I was lacking stimulation, something that could tell me. Juan told me that if I kept working like that, he would take me as his partner. I made it. I was his partner at the workshop, but what happens? During a long time, I knew how to endure all the pressures, but afterwards, things get out of my hand, and in a way I felt guilty, and I thought that what I learned was useless because I was useless. In other words, you gathered a knowledge. There were things that you knew about, things that you've already done, things you could do, but at a given moment you were doubtful about those things, but you could recover, and those things proved to be useful. And these are the basics. When I spoke to Fabian, for example, when I talked about his insecurity, that's probably because he hasn't get together, so to speak, with himself as yet. He still doesn't recognize his abilities because he's doubtful. But to be dead doubtful, that may be most important and a very good thing. That's not a bad thing, feeling doubtful. As soon as you can think things other, you can start solving problems that before you thought they had been solved, but they were not. In other words, doubt makes you think about things you never thought about before, and that's uttermost positive. It dawned on me when I was talking about that, and any idea about how that happened? Well, regarding what happened, I looked for a job, say at a workshop, so I could get things straight, I could manage things, you see, so that I could get out of here, you see, get out, get fully discharged, that's it. And when I started working, the first day, the first thing I found out was that I really enjoyed the job, and it happened to me as it happened to him. He said that he remembered things that had happened to him before, and I remember grammar school when we made the little planes. I don't know whether all people made those little planes at school with balsa wood and waxed paper. Those little planes, I remember that we made them, and we made them with so much enthusiasm. There was competitivity to see which one finished a plane first, which plane flew farther, and here too there is competitivity. That's precisely that. Both Gabriel and Cesar, and I think that Fabian too, that's his case too, they try to do things. These burst out from inside, and when these burst out from ourselves, we're quite happy. In other words, we don't keep people with difficulties here at hospital. That's the person proper whenever he or she discovers he or she has resources. That's your case, Gabriel. That's also Cesar and Gustavo's case, the resource of finding a job. Our idea is that anyone be able to discover that and start moving. Discharge from hospital is not necessarily stated by doctors. I don't feel sure about him, because today I wanted him to come in here. I told him, let's start again, and it's quite difficult for me to have my family united, difficult for me to talk to my children. All right, we have just watched a sequence on the discovery of one's own resources. Feedback is most eloquent, but for our audience, could you clarify a little? Well, during this century, many psychotherapeutic ways have been appearing, moreover, after psychoanalysis was born. Then other psychotherapies appeared, directly born out of psychoanalysis. Now, whatever is psychotherapy, a patient develops psychological resources that we could call genuine ego resources aiming at conflict solving, aiming at patient being able to face his or her relationship with others, facing general problems, facing life indeed. In that sense, what psychoanalysis does that is making the unconscious conscious, it's in a way achieving our discovery of our own resources. Family therapy, the fact that being able to live together, the ability to manage family aggressivity, developing a better ability to tolerance in a relationship with other person, these are also ways for us to develop our own resources. Same goes with group therapy, and lastly, what we can observe among those multifamily groups, that's the development of their own resources. So more therapeutic resources are discovered because by means of identification, a group therapy can take many things from other people. They were thinking the fact to see oneself mirrored in the conflicts of other people, observing the solutions other people have adopted, which are possibilities you hadn't been thinking about, and so on. Marta, that mother we just listened to at the end of the tape, the woman pointing out that she can't talk to her children and doesn't know what to do. Could you clarify the point a little more? Actually, we didn't show more of her intervention because the tape was garbled. What could be your reply to "I don't know what to do"? Indeed, this woman says that in a way all she observes among those groups worries her. That is, she has more and more doubts. So during session, I tried and explained her that in such group, the idea of participating with other groups is not aiming at myself, the doctor, telling them how to heal or how to help her son, in her case, for example. Conversely, anyone must find his or her way through therapy, resorting to the dynamic of the multifamily group wherein each of us is participating. So little by little, everyone discovers his or her own resources, thus getting better, taking care of oneself, bettering links, bettering all. Could you tell us whether multifamily groups are for psychosis cases only? Precisely, no. I've started multifamily groups. I could say I've discovered them at Borda Hospital in the early 60s with psychotic patients and their families, but of course, I could promptly use them within other contexts, and I also imagine fresh, possible contexts I haven't been working with as yet, but if I have time enough, I'll try and develop the multifamily group in, say, general practice, especially in psychosomatic pathology. In psychosomatic diseases having a most important emotional component. The emotional component comes to life, is generally triggered among the family dynamics and not only from the unconscious only. The fact that a psychosomatic patient benefits from a long psychoanalytic treatment is a well-known fact. Psychoanalysts are keenly aware of that, but in such group, benefit appears quite promptly because conflicts arising among multifamily groups are very much related to psychosomatic pathology. High blood pressure, gastritis, stomach ulcers, ulcer colitis, and many other illnesses. In general, these symptoms have been triggered by pathogen interdependencies among a family. If one of the patients we have been observing gets mad due to a violence problem, a psychosomatic patient, on the contrary, is taken ill. He or she doesn't get mad. That's his or her body which is suffering. You could say that patient has a mad body but not a mad mind. So multifamily groups build a context where it's easier for you to teach psychiatry than among other type of group. Here you can teach what such thing is a psychoanalytical interpretation, because patient can listen to the analyst explaining and discussing what he's talking about, what are the aims, what such things are transference, counter-transference, narcissism, above all pathological narcissism, and all the dynamism psychoanalysis has pointed out to. You can see them with a magnifying glass. And same goes with systemic therapy, because a family system can be worked here according to systemic norms and systemic ideas, wherein phenomena dealt with from a systemic point of view are also looked at with a magnifying glass. So different techniques can be applied within the multifamily complex. Can't you see what am I so enthusiastic about? It's because a multifamily context allows you to include either different types of pathology or different types of problem. It's a fine context for problem solving. Besides, it allows you to resort to different ways of thinking. That is, you can't resort to every possible trend and include them within the multifamily context. Well, tape is over. As a colleague to Dr. Garcia Badaracco, I followed his steps as of the 60s. I've tried my best to imitate him, and I must say that results are simply terrific. Exactly as he said. On behalf of the Stern Foundation, on my own behalf, since I direct tape recording on mental health for the Foundation, I want to thank Dr. Garcia Badaracco for his contributions. I take advantage of this opportunity to tell you that it is quite possible for us to open at the Stern Foundation a postgraduate training course on psychiatry about multifamily groups. So see you when the next tape is in the air.
Thank you.